hello everybody, welcome to Competition is Overrated. This webinar I have Moody Mahmoudi with me and Johan Karpus from Blue Ocean Strategy. Very quickly, just to dive right into it, a couple of housekeeping items. So if you've got any questions, please put them in the Q&A. Please share in the chat where you're from and perhaps the company that you work for, what brought you here today. And feel free to share any thoughts that you have during the webinar. It will be recorded, so we can share a link with you after the event, and you can share it with any colleagues if you'd like to do that. And also you've got our contact details on the slide now. So without further ado, we'll jump right into it. If I can ask you, Moody, and you're going to introduce yourselves. Moody.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much, Bridget, for hosting this webinar and having us. So I'm Moody. I'm one of the co-founders of Next. Next is a discovery and design platform for high-performing teams. Clients like Deloitte, BASF, Bosch, Canon, and the likes use our software to engage with their customers in meaningful ways, gather evidence of the unmet needs and aspirations of the users, and then create and iterate value propositions that their customers love. The company is headquartered in Amsterdam, and our focus has always been in helping teams build that evidence and confidence that they need that would support the delivery and development of very, very successful products. I always joke around by saying our job is to make sure product teams make their users fall in love with them all over again. And that's what we get out of bed every day for.
Very good. Great. Johan, perhaps you can say a few words about yourself and your company.
Yeah, thanks, Bridget. Hi, everybody. I'm Johan Karpus. I'm the founder of Six Paths Consulting. It's a strategy boutique focusing on organic growth. And incidentally, Blue Ocean Strategy is one of our favorite approaches to high growth. I myself falling in love with it at INSEAD, where I did my MBA. And afterwards, when I worked with one of the professors in applying this methodology.
Interesting, that's great. So we'll talk more about what Blue Ocean Strategy is in a moment, but perhaps we can get to the title of this webinar, Competition is Overrated. Slightly obnoxious quote perhaps from Peter Thiel around competition is for losers. What does that mean? Moody, tell us more. What did you mean by the title for this event?
You know, I must admit, Bridget, we were inspired by what Peter Thiel said about competition is for losers, but we thought, hey, we'll just water it down and dilute it a little bit. But more seriously, Bridget, fundamentally, I think the idea for us around this piece and the work that we are doing as a software company with Johan and his business, bringing Blue Ocean Strategies onto our platform, has been around the fact that since the earliest childhood, we are taught that competition is good. I remember, you know, the swimming competitions and the football competitions and potato bag races in the, you know, dead ends of our neighbor's street. I mean, you know, we were always competing. And, you know, as a kid, I was competing, and then I went to school. And then in school, I was also competing. You had rankings and you had grades and you had, the better and the less good. Constant competition was there. Then you go to university, it's always the same. And then you go to your job, you're competing for jobs. I had an opportunity to, take an entrepreneurship course in my last year of university and started a company. And it was all about competition yet again. I mean, some of the strategy frameworks are even designed around this competition idea around, hey, do a competitive map of your it's all about competition. But then fundamentally, what you realize, Bridget, is that actually we don't have to compete. Actually, the easier way, the better way to create value in the world we live in is not to compete. But that takes a lot of effort because you need to actually go out there and figure out, hey, what are the opportunities out there? Where are these blind spots, those vanilla fields where I can actually uncover something that a group of customers need and they're underserved by? And then build value propositions that actually capture the imagination of those people. And it doesn't mean that we need to go and compete head on with others, but we can actually create value in that way.
So it's about framing the problem slightly differently and getting out of these old habits of copying what others are doing and trying to do it better or faster.
It's fascinating. It's obviously yes to both, hands down. I think fundamentally, Bridget, the idea has been that there is a market and the market is static. And then people compete on the supply side. But fundamentally, I think that this is not true. The world we live in is changing at a speed never equated before. Right? Digital technology is changing. People's consumption habits are changing. People's value expectations are changing. There are these mega trends that are changing the requirements, the demand side of what opportunities are in the market. So the markets are opening up. There is opportunities all over the place. But that requires from people who want to go into these spaces, the discipline to do the discovery work up front, to spend the time to understand what is served, what is not served, what people really want, and then build propositions that fill those those blank spots in the market. And so this idea that the market is static and it is what it is fundamentally what I think Johan and I try to challenge in this piece by saying, no, the market is not what it is. Markets are created by amazing innovators. And we need to be able to go there, find them, and innovate in them in order to create new markets.
Wow, that's fantastic. So how does this tie into blue ocean strategy or blue ocean thinking? Johan, perhaps you can help us with that.
So I think I could refer to some of the principles of blue ocean strategy to demonstrate that. One of them is the focus on non-customers. Basically, in traditional businesses, we look at our existing customers and we try to do better, faster, cheaper, right? To create value and win those customers. Whereas here we look at other groups who don't do business with us, who refuse or who are not even aware that our offering is valuable to them. And in terms of number, it's a far bigger group that we could tap into. And actually, if we look into identifying this kind of non-customers group, and we aim at creating value proposition and business models appealing to them, then we actually target a new demand and we potentially create a new market where initially we might have a monopoly position, right? So that's why we have all the benefits of creating something new rather than focusing on competing in an existing market.
Right, so non-customers are people who are not currently customers, but who we through Blue Ocean methods understand better and potentially can offer new, completely innovative products and services to.
I mean, let's not think of technology innovation. It could be something as simple as, the case of Nintendo Wii. Right? Before 2006, Microsoft with the Xbox and PlayStation from Sony, they were fighting on really, like I mentioned, providing faster processors, better graphic cards, more game titles, and so on, which was great for the target customer group, the core gamers. But actually, they were spending so much to that, they had to subsidize their console by $100. And those were making up by revenues from game development. But Nintendo, who was not in a position to, offer more because they were quite in a bad shape at the time, they actually applied Blue Ocean strategy. And as an example of non-customer are the non-traditional gamers, very young children and older people. So actually they thought of what can we create, something simple that is appealing not only to customers, but also to this type of non-customers. So, we create a compelling product that could be accessible by all those categories.
It was actually wildly successful.
It was hugely successful. You probably remember in the UK, I was living in the UK at the time. I remember the headlines. Before Christmas, they're all sold out and people were queuing for Nintendo Wii and so on. So it was a great success story.
Right, yeah, that's a great example. Thanks so much, Johan, for illuminating that. And so perhaps we can go back to this collaboration that you have together and talk about the product that you've built and what the role of technology is in helping somebody who, is looking at this as a problem set, trying to be innovative within their organization. What's the role of technology in helping them to do that?
Bridget, sure, if I may go. I think, fundamentally the idea for us, even when we started Next as an organization, was a democratization of the function of discovery. And, I think what you heard also from Jan very much is Blue Ocean is very much about identifying those unmet needs or aspirations that people have, and then creating propositions that capture that. It's, again, very rigorous on the discovery side of the house to try to identify these, open markets, essentially, or inexistent yet markets with those innate needs. And so when we thought about, when Jan and I started talking about, the work that he does and the work that we do, that it's very unusual to think, hey, Blue Ocean, and then technology, because fundamentally Blue Ocean has a third word behind it, which is called strategy. And very much this framework has lived in the strategy departments for a very, very long time. It's really been on the CEO agenda, chief strategy officers do workshops, and this is the kind of stuff where it's been spotted. But really, it really belongs to the product teams. This is where it should reside, within the product teams who are building propositions and products for these non-customers, as you call them. So the real idea for us of using technology was scaling and democratization. How can we take something that was in a really thick book, published by very smart people, mainly targeted for many smart other people? How can we take that and unlock that value and make it accessible at the fraction of the time, effort, and cost to others? So that essentially it's not some one exercise that we do once every 3 years when we want to invest $100 million in something. But how can we make that something that is a daily task, daily routine, daily thing we think about and take into consideration for every feature we are pushing out, for every update that we are doing, for every iteration of our product, or for any enhancement that we may be doing? Product teams who are building software or non-software, it's exactly the same idea. The thinking for us was we can use technology to codify the frameworks of Blue Ocean and then deliver them at scale across a very wide, broad spectrum so that people can actually do them on their daily lives. Bridget, to make a parallel analogy for this, think of training. Right? You don't have to have a coach who comes to your house and then stands next to you while you're doing the sit-ups and the whole thing. No, Nike app, right? I'm one example amongst many apps, right? Essentially democratize this, meaning I have a coach who tells me based on my goals and ambitions, what moves I need to do, what sequence, how many times a week. It even holds me accountable for that matter. And the thinking for us was, how can we follow that similar pattern, making Blue Ocean much more digestible and accessible and actionable for product teams at a very large scale?
That's a great example. I think we've actually got a demo lined up. Is it possible to see the tool?
Sure, Bridget. We can definitely do a short demo, maybe 5 minutes of a walkthrough. So yeah, let me share my screen, and then we can dive right in. Let me know when you can see it. Yeah,
it's on.
Cool. So yeah, getting started with Blue Ocean thinking in Next, and basically starting discovering those blue oceans and tapping into those blue oceans is really simple. As Moody has already mentioned, we've really codified the best practices of Blue Ocean strategy into what we call a template in Next. So whenever you sign into Next, all you need to do is create what we today call a new project. And in here, you will immediately find the publisher 6 Paths Consulting. So if you click it, then you would find the Blue Ocean strategy template here. You can click on it, and then you can create your own new initiative, your Blue Ocean initiative. For today, the purpose of today, given that we have very limited time, I'm going to show you an example project so that I can quickly walk you through that. So let's take a look at that. The first thing that you'll notice here is that, and I would like you to keep this in mind as we walk through this, Next is really a system of data. It's not a task manager. Of course, this looks like a Kanban, but every single node that you'll see here is essentially a data point. And how we have organized the data in a Blue Ocean template, so in this project that you're looking at, is in 5 boards. So the first board is your to-dos board. And here you find essentially all your activities that you can undergo, such as an as a strategy canvas, a buyer utility map, 6 paths framework, to come up with assumptions for each of the phases of Blue Ocean strategy. You see here visual awakening, visual exploration, etc. Then the second board, more importantly, is where you capture all the assumptions that come out of this work. So let's say you did an as a strategy canvas, the assumptions that you want to test that come out of that, you would add here. I'll get to that in a sec. Then you have your prototypes in the prototypes board, the field research, where you start validating all those assumptions and prototypes you capture here, and then the insights and learnings in the end, which you can then use to validate or negate those assumptions that you came up with. Now, very practically, how does this work? Well, very simply put, you can just click on one of these notes. Let's say you want to start with an as a strategy canvas. In this case, you'll find a couple of properties here that help you organize your data. And then you have the instructions on top as to how you can do an as a strategy canvas. Now, of course, many people are used to tools like Mural or Miro. So what we've done is we created here a path for you to go into Mural. I can immediately create my as a strategy canvas. I had already one open here, so let me show you. So this is my as a strategy canvas. And now, of course, as soon as I'm done with mapping everything out and coming up with the assumptions I want to test, I can actually bring this data back into Next. So I can click the share button. I copy the embed link. There we go. And if we go back to Next, you'll notice I can here start embedding. It's very simple. I just type /mural in this case. And I copy and paste the Mural link. And this will virtually embed, in this case, the as a strategy canvas. And as you noticed here already, I had a little write-up here of the most important findings for my as a strategy canvas. And then I started highlighting them. Highlighting, you can basically just select a piece of text and then you can highlight it and you can reuse those highlights to, for example, create assumptions. So in here you see that now my Mural board is loaded. Let's take a look at then, as soon as we did the as a strategy canvas, I can start mapping my assumptions. The ones that I want to test, I would bring over into Next. And here's one of my assumptions that I've already created. You see, I've again organized it using the properties. So that's the structured data that you find on top. I can indicate whether the assumption needs to be tested, what kind of assumption it is, what the priority is. And then below it, I embedded the highlights that I created as part of my as a strategy canvas as supporting material into this assumption. And this is really when the real fun is starting and when actually Next starts to show its real value, which is when you started mapping all the assumptions and you can keep track of all of it. The next thing you want to do is the field research, which is where you really go out and speak with customers or non-customers and start validating those assumptions. So let's say you want to do a customer interview. Here I've already created one of my customer interviews with Melanie. And I did this to validate the assumption of perceived value versus on the price level, which came out of the as a strategy canvas. I used the customer interview that we added here. I'll show you in a sec how you can get there. And as you can see, I used some of my sample questions from this particular tool. I started typing right away, and then I started highlighting all my interview notes. All those interview notes that I created, and for the record, I just select a piece of text. I can use any of the text I used before or create a new one. That's how I create a highlight. All of those will show up on the right-hand side of my screen, which is where I will have all my highlights. And from here, I can actually start creating new notes. So for example, I could say this is a note that represents a new learning, which I can then use to validate or negate the assumption. So let's say we create a new insight out of this. And you would see the highlight is embedded as evidence, and this is where I can start describing my insight. In the essence of time, I'm just going to show you one of my pre-existing insights that I've already created. So you'll see here in my insights and learnings board that I've created a couple of insights, pain points, user needs, observations, based on the highlights I already created in my interviews. And behind it, you'll see all the highlights that I created in my field research. Right? So here you find, for example, some evidence from the customer interview with Melanie that basically justify the learning that I've described here. And now I can go back to my assumption and say, well, this assumption is validated, this one needs more testing, etc. And if I want to have more context, I can always click my way back into the interview. This was a very quick run through. Of course, there's much more I can share with you. Yeah, but maybe we can keep it here. And I would really recommend you to just sign up for Next so you can try it yourself. Bridget?
That's great, Rick. Thank you so much for giving us a quick tour of the platform. I think we can probably move on to take questions now. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to put it in the Q&A, and I'll be monitoring it as the questions come in. And perhaps I can ask one of my own while we wait for these questions to come in. Blue Ocean strategy is often associated with doing a workshop with a strategy team. It seems like your approach is different to that. Can you talk a little bit about how you see people using this within their organization? Is this something that they do daily? How do they actually use your tool?
Yeah, so I can take that question. Well, it's not just a workshop, I would say. The process is a combination of workshops, but what's more important is the experiment part. The workshops are just environments where we structure our assumptions, right? But at the end of the day, if we stop there, it's just a nice discussion about the things that we know. Whereas when you go out in the field and you interview non-customers, you validate some of your assumptions and explore new insights, then that's the point where you unleash lots of value. So at the beginning, you should run it as a process, because it's a rigorous approach. Next offers this guided tour. All the tools are explained, the reasoning, and so on. But at the end of the day, yes, it's like you assumed, it can become part of your daily work, right? And then, like any tool, the more you use it, the more natural it comes. And you can apply it to a lot of other things. I mean, I just think of, for example, the eliminate, reduce, raise, create grid, which makes possible this raising value and reducing cost at the same time, right? You could apply this to your, I don't know, New Year's resolution, right? What activities could you eliminate for next year, right? I don't know, maybe watching TV at evening. What could you create, right? Maybe, I don't know, take a guitar course and reduce your time on non-value added factors, right? So yes, they are very versatile tools which could be used in a daily work.
Right, but there is a sense that we have to have an idea of process around it. So if somebody is coming to, they work in innovation, or they perhaps run a product function, and they're interested in using these tools, is this something that they can learn by doing? Or do they need to go and read 3 books and hire a consultant before they get started?
No, that's the whole point. You come as not knowing anything. And in fact, Next, correct me if I'm wrong, Moody, but I see Next as a platform for democratizing innovation beyond your corporate innovation team, right? So you need to instill skills and tools and frameworks in the business units, right? And that's a great way to do it, because the processes are explained, the tools are explained, but it's not training. You actually are doing things. You have a strategic alignment with your unit strategy, and you create something that brings value.
Yeah, so actually we've got a question here from somebody who says they're a product manager. They have a team of 5 people. And is this something that they could use in strategy? He says, I don't control the company's strategy. I don't work in a strategy team, but I'm very interested in innovation. Can I use these tools?
I think, Bridget, this goes straight back to what I was talking about as the role of technology, right? It's true that, Blue Ocean has traditionally been very much a C-level thing. And I think the idea that Jon and I had when we met and got talking was, how do we democratize this? How do we make this accessible to everybody at a very large scale? And the practice of blue ocean thinking has really been on a couple of things. I think, there's the process part of it, the guidance, what should I do, how should I do it, and all these kinds of things that is, of course, encoded and codified in software. But also, just as importantly, I think, is what comes out of doing that work. So it tells you go do experiments or go do market research. But where does my market research go? How do I then essentially am able to create or identify trends across maybe 15 activities that I did over 6 months of market research? I mean, if you log that stuff into a Word document, you will never identify any trends because it's like a black hole, right? So the whole idea here is for us to, guide people in doing the right things, and then providing them and using technology as a vehicle to bring all of that data back, and then allow them to process it, interpret it, identify trends, i.e. those unmet needs, those market opportunities, and then go out there and create propositions, and through iteration and experimentation, create new markets that would really allow them to play a dominant role in. I think that's really how we think about it. And that's how we wanted to say, hey, this is not just a C-level thing. CEO of a product, i.e. a product owner or a product manager, or you're a developer, you're a UX researcher, UX designer, it's all the same. You can use Blue Ocean on a daily basis in order to differentiate your product in the marketplace.
Yeah, and what's really clever about your tools is the kind of tagging and the highlighting that means you can take all of that raw data and summarize it in different ways, depending on what it is that you're looking at or the stakeholder, but you can always link back to the raw data itself so you can see where insights come from, right? So I guess for this person asking the question, their team of 5 people, it's quite a good tool for collaborating on these types of problems as well, because you're collecting that data over time and kind of building a collective understanding of your market and your non-customers. Okay, so great. So how does, I just want to wrap up now because we did say 30 minutes and we're coming to a close. How does somebody watching this webinar who wants to use your tools, how do they get started?
Bridget, nothing more simple. You just go to nextapp.co, sign up. It's free of charge. You can get started. You will be inside the application like Rick showed you. Just select the Blue Ocean template and get going. And the whole idea for us is to have you get started, start creating value. And at any point in time, if you feel at some point you need assistance, you need somebody to come and guide you, you're getting so much value that you want to take this to the next level, then obviously, Jon and his team at Six Path Consulting are there to help you guys along the process. But really, this is a self-service model with us here to help you in any way we can. May that be on the product side or on the Blue Ocean strategy work side with Jon to get you guys to create these amazing inexistent markets and just capture the imagination of the markets and customers with the products that you guys can build. Wow, great. So it's a free tool. That sounds great. Thank you so much, Moody, for sharing that with us. Great. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for coming along and for answering all the questions. I really feel like we have a much better understanding of the Blue Ocean strategy tools from Next. So that's going to be really great. And I look forward to using them myself, in fact. Great. Well, bye, everyone.
Thanks a lot, Brigitte.
Thank you,
Thanks, everybody, for attending.